past few weeks, I'm sure if you've been listening, you remember I've been saying I've been playing something that I can't talk about. That hasn't been Cult of the Lamb, unfortunately. I have played that now, but that's not what I was talking about. Was Spider-Man Remastered on PC.
Bam. Look at that.
I got this game like 2 weeks ago, but like the game that people are going to be playing now that it's out was only really patched in like 2 or 3 days ago. Nixies and Insomniac Games. So Nixies is the development house that Sony bought a while back, specifically for stuff like this, like to port games to PC at a high quality, because Nixies used to work a lot with Square Enix and Eidos Montreal to bring their games to PC, and they always did a phenomenal job, and Spider-Man is no different. I think it's quite incredible given that this is a proprietary engine from Insomniac, and its PC port has so many options that it makes, like, you know, even games running on like Unreal and stuff look pedestrian in terms of the options it gives you to you know, make the game run on a wide variety of systems. Yeah, you can tailor it. I think that the quality of the game doesn't, it surpasses the PS5 in some ways, but in some ways it just like matches it in terms of quality. But one thing, if you have the capable hardware, is like the ray tracing looks unbelievable.
It's
like,
real good. So
it's tiers above what PS5 is able to do.
For example, if you're watching the video version now, just look at all them shiny reflections. It's real good.
It's not even just the reflections. Like Digital Foundry obviously has a lot of side-by-side screenshots, but it's like the geometry in the reflections is of a high resolution. The number of things that can be reflected it's much higher. So like your reflections just have way more definition, and it might not be noticeable if you don't put them side by side, but like when you go back to the PS5 version, it's noticeably less like impressive. Which is saying something, because that game was impressive from the get-go anyway. So.
But I mean, it's funny because for me, it feels like the game that keeps on giving, because I played it on PS4. I was like, damn, this is a great game. Watched Lenska play it on PS5, and I played a bit myself. I was like, damn, this game looks real good. this next gen. And then now on PC, I'm like, it looks even better.
It still looks great. Yeah.
I showed Lenska yesterday, you know, that opening scene, so good when Peter wakes up, jumps out the window.
It's so great. The whole transition to like jumps out a window and then you're in the game.
You're in the game.
Yeah.
And I was just swinging, and I was like, how good does this look? And she was like, oh my God, like it looks lifelike. It's this game, it's 2018 game, but they've really
4-year-old game already, hey?
Yeah,
insane.
They've made it look. I mean, it looked good on PS5, obviously, but just running on PS5 at like a high frame rate. I think I had it running at 2K. I was like, it's really.
Oh yeah, that 1440p sharpness with like a frame rate that runs like in excess of 100 is real. So that's one thing that obviously we need to chat about. This game, as good as it looks, is a bit like resource intensive.
Yeah, it's intensive,
but not with the things that you expect. So like, yes, it's GPU intensive if you like putting ray tracing up to its like full tilt, but it still looks really good even if you aren't like putting everything up to its max. Where you might run into issues is actually your CPU out in the open world. It's like heavily CPU limited. Like in indoor scenes, I was maxing out at like 144 hertz on my PC.
Yeah.
But in the open world, because I'm only running a 5600X, which is not a bad CPU, it's just like it's like 2 gens behind now. Like it couldn't get really above 70 and sometimes dip below 60. And trying to figure out which settings have, you know, allowed me to prevent that is almost impossible. Like most of them don't. So yeah, that's just something to be aware of. And maybe it will change. I know during the review period, Nixies actually said that they are improving performance on AMD CPUs, because at first it was abysmal. It was like really bad. And it was only this week that it got to the point where it is now and actually feels quite good.
Yeah.
So maybe they'll improve it going forward. I know there's some talk of how it can maybe use SSDs a bit better, so it isn't just chucking loads of assets on your CPU to decompress. It can actually use like fast SSDs to do that.
Yeah.
Which I guess on the PS5 it can do because it just expects that SSD to be there. But like on a PC, it needs to make provisions for like, well, what if someone doesn't have a fast SSD?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
What if somebody has the equivalent of a PS4 PC?
Yeah. I mean, this could have been a good use, or a good like case study on what if games are going to start requiring a certain SSD speed to even work. And I think I'm actually quite surprised that hasn't happened yet. Especially with like, you've got talk of Returnal coming to PC, and that is a PS5 exclusive game. So I suspect a lot of work is going into that port to make it playable on much slower SSDs, or maybe we'll finally get a game that says, no, you need a PCIe Gen 4 SSD, otherwise this will straight up not work.
Your straight up HDD is just not going to work.
Yeah, like think about that game, how you had to, like when you ran to a door and it loaded that next area immediately, like that will not work on a non-SSD. So
it'll just sit and wait. It'll break the whole experience.
Exactly. So I think we are getting closer and closer to that sort of future. But at the same time, I do think you should be running, like at least on my machine, I've got 2 SSDs. One is like the ultra fast one, and one is like still an SSD, but not an ultra fast one. And I know if I'm playing a game now, I'll put it on the ultra fast one, and I use the other one as like cold storage, put it that way. And I think, you kind of have to do that. So but yeah, Spider-Man's great. I think you've played a bit. Have you noticed how the game is, like, as impressive as it is, it's showing its age in certain aspects of its open world now?
So I only played about 2 hours on PC, but remember, like I mentioned earlier, Lenska played it earlier this year. So let's call it 3 to 4 months ago. And even then I was like, oof. Much as I love this game, I'm seeing how dated the open world feels. I mean, even when we played it when did it come out? 2018.
2018, yeah.
The only reason I actually noticed that specifically is because we went for the platinum, and that was like, okay, you got to do everything. And at that point, it's like, okay, let me do all the crimes in the area. And that's when it became very clear of, oh, damn, this is a lot of bloat. Like there's a ton of bloat, in the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, the base experience is really good. Like this is one of the best Spider-Man stories, I'd say.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like it's got real good beats, great highs. But the
very
actual
good story missions.
The actual side quest activities. I mean, there are a couple side quests and they're fun, but yeah, it's very dated by today's standards.
It stuck out to me a lot more than I thought it would. Just like, especially at the beginning of the game, because the beginning of the game is a lot of story missions disguised as side missions.
Yeah.
That are there to introduce you. Like you will do something in a story mission, and then Peter will be like, "Oh, they've got these things happening all over the city," and the map will just be like, it will just vomit icons at you. Yeah. And I forgot how like tightly tied those things are to like suit abilities and gadget abilities. Like to unlock them, you need to do X number of crimes or X number of this activity or find X number of backpacks and stuff like that. So, and then there's moments in the story where Peter will be like, oh, I've got some downtime. Let me just
go do some stuff,
go on patrol. And the story will not progress until you've done like 2 or 3 side activities.
Yeah.
And I just did not enjoy that because the activities aren't as interesting.
It really boils down to there's a group of bad guys, just beat them up.
Just go beat them up.
For the most part. There are some others like Harry Osborn's environmental tasks are a little bit different and more varied, but that
suck those.
Those end up becoming like collect this or swing over to that thing over there.
The first one of that is like swing through clouds of pollution, and it's just like so stupid. I think if you're playing this game for the first time, you'll probably be far more forgiving of it because it's just the novelty of swinging around and the feeling of being Spider-Man is so powerful. Like it feels so good. But we've both played this game now, and we've played Miles Morales. I've played Miles Morales twice. So like that novelty is still there, but it's not the same. It's not like the big wow factor as it was back then. But so also, I think it's just more apparent the content is just like not up to scuff with.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think you mentioned in our Discord earlier this week of it's apparent how dated this game is purely because Miles Morales is like a more condensed experience. Because Miles Morales, like, obviously I think it's better in certain ways, but
absolutely.
But it's also filled with fluff, but it's less apparent because it's a lot shorter. Like you can 100% that game in, I'm thumb sucking it, but let's call it 10 to 15 hours, maybe 20. Whereas this,
I think I 100%ed it in like 14.
Yeah,
14
whereas this game, oh my god, to tick off every crime and everything, you're looking at like 50 to 60 hours, maybe easy. 40, if you know what you're doing.
Easily, yeah. No, I agree. Like, and Miles Morales, I think Miles Morales benefits because it takes the assumption that you've played Spider-Man before, because it throws everything at you right at the beginning. Yeah. I remember playing it the first time and actually struggling to get back into the groove of the combat because it just kind of expected you to remember how the combat worked.
Yeah.
Which in a way is kind of neat because it doesn't need to spend time reteaching you everything. And I think that's why it felt way more streamlined and could be more streamlined. But yeah, the quality of the side missions in Miles Morales was a step above for sure. So I'm just hoping that, because I think the second one is coming out, or it's slated for next year, Spider-Man 2. So I hope that the world itself will feel a lot more modern in that regard.
Will that be current gen only, like PS5 only? Okay,
it's not PS4.
So I'd be very curious to see what that game is. Because I think
you were saying it would be cool if it was co-op, because now it features Peter and Miles as well.
Spoiler if you didn't know. I mean, there's a Miles Morales game. The next game is going to feature both of them, but we don't know to what degree they're going to both be included.
I mean, there's just been the first trailer which featured both of them, and we know that Kraven is going to be a big villain, and we know Venom's going to be a villain.
I mean, can you imagine swinging around the city together? That'd be, I think, some good fun. But
or they do a GTA 5 style thing where you swap between
the two.
Yeah. I really like that, because I think if you haven't played Miles, like, it's not just, this is now Spider-Man, but with a different like costume. It's like Miles plays so differently. Yeah. His abilities are different. His stealth abilities are different. His combat is different. So yeah, I think it would be great if the game utilizes them both to those strengths. So,
yeah. But I mean, if you've not owned a PS4 or PS5 and you're new to Spider-Man, you have some good content to look forward to, because I mean, this is out now. Miles Morales is coming out late this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they did say later this year. Yeah,
and
that game on PC is going to look, because that game also just its style is so different. Like, I can't wait to see that on PC.
It's also different time of the year. It's like it's snowing, so
there's a lot more neon and color in there. So I think the ray tracing improvements are going to look spectacular in that game.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got the criticisms, but I still love the Spider-Man game. It is the best Spider-Man game. Well, both of them. This entire series is just the best, like the best open world Spider-Man simulator you could hope for. I mean, we've known since 2018 when we played the game that they put a lot of time into making the swinging feel good, and you can feel it. It's like we pick up this game 4 years later and we still go, oh my God, swinging around is still the best thing.
Yeah. It still feels so good. Like, I still rarely used fast travel, because it's just so much fun to get around. Like, the combination of swinging, web zipping, it feels phenomenal. Just really, really good. So yeah, I'm happy that people who, like you said, who don't have consoles are able to play this now. And it's a shame it took 4 whole years. Like, that's a bit of a bummer, because it does mean that some of the design elements feel out of touch with what you'd expect now, but it's still such a good game.
Yeah. Would recommend if you've got a PC.
Would recommend, absolutely.
Definitely play it. It's a good time.